This is the first Christmas Day since 2004 that we haven't had a Doctor Who Christmas special. But let's be realistic, folks. Did we really want our day sullied with a Chibnall Christmas episode? I think not. Let's put aside the train wreck formerly known as Doctor Who and take a trip in the TARDIS back to better times. Today we will be counting down from best to worst all the Christmas specials. At number 1 we go back to where it all began with the Christmas Invasion. This special, more than any other, had a monumental task. After being given just one series with Christopher Eccleston, we were worried that this might be the end, yet again, for Doctor Who. We had been without the show on our screens for 16 years, bar a single TV movie in 1996. Eccleston had been brilliant as the Doctor, and it felt like, for a minute, we might have been teased with what might have been, and how wrong we were. The 10th Doctor spends most of the episode asleep, but then bursts onto the screen in the last 15 minutes, and our fears disappeared almost instantly. It was brilliant, epic, and brought in a new golden age of Doctor Who. At number 2, we have one that probably not everyone will agree with, but I love this episode. A Christmas Carol was Stephen Moffat's first stab at a Christmas special, and, while many of his specials would have some issues, to put it mildly, he hit the ground running this time. Coming off the brilliant Series 5, Moffat gave us a self-contained story free of his confusing arcs. Moffat is at his best with one-off episodes, and this one hit the mark perfectly. It was a change of pace from RTD's blockbuster specials, and gave us a new take on the Charles Dickens classic. This episode has been part of my regular Christmas viewing for 8 years now. It's dark, gritty, and yet sentimental at the same time. At number 3, we have The End of Time Part 1. This 2-part story is about as epic as Doctor Who gets. A swan song for our favorite New Who Doctor, and the surprise return of the Master played by John Sim. There is a sense of impending doom for the 10th Doctor throughout this story, and yet, it still managed to maintain RTD's charm and humor. RTD knew it was best to leave on a high note, and boy did he ever, with this his penultimate episode. At number 4, we have Voyage of the Damned. This was more like a Hollywood blockbuster than an episode of Doctor Who. Based off the tragic sinking of the Titanic in 1912, RTD and Tennant gave us a heart-pounding episode that just doesn't stop. The episode was also augmented with brilliant performances from Clive Swift and Kylie Minogue. This was Doctor Who at its height, right in the middle of the yet-to-be-surpassed David Tennant era, and still holds the record for the highest-rated episode 11 years after the fact. At number 5, we have The Time of the Doctor, our final goodbye to Doctor 11. The basic plot to the story may not have been the strongest, but what makes it so high on this list is the performance given by Matt Smith. We see the Doctors age double over the course of one episode, and Matt Smith finally got a chance to play the old Doctor that had been a defining characteristic of his Doctor since his first episode. This was easily Smith's best performance, and he gave us probably one of the best final scenes of any Doctor. Unlike the somewhat depressing end of David Tennant's Doctor, Smith left on a message of positivity and hope that left the audience choking away tears. At number 6, we have The Runaway Bride. The character of Donna, played to perfection by Catherine Tate, is easily the best companion we've had in New Who. We hadn't seen such a strong chemistry between Doctor and companion since Tom Baker and Elizabeth Sladen in the 1970s. The episode was a comedic gem. It didn't have the best villain, but we didn't care. Tate and Tennant stole the show, and RTD obviously noted this as well, given that Tate came back as a full-time companion. At number 7, we have the Snowman. After saying goodbye to Amy and Rory in the previous episode, this served as a mini reset to the 11th Doctor's era. What is most striking about this episode is how new everything felt. We had a new theme and opening sequence mid-series, which is still my favorite to this day. We had a newly redesigned TARDIS, which is also my favorite design. This was also one of Jenna Coleman's better performances. If only we could have kept this Clara instead of the one that we got during the Capaldi era. At number 8, we have The Next Doctor. This was a nice change of pace from RTD's previous Christmas stories in a Victorian setting. The title may have teased us a bit, but I thought the implementation was very clever. The strongest point in this episode is a brilliant performance from David Morrissey. He runs the gamut from brilliantly comedic to heartbreakingly sad. This was also a nice way to herald in Tennant's specials year, and also has the distinction of being the final episode filmed in standard definition. At number 9, we have Last Christmas, which might be Moffat's only other decent Christmas special. I wouldn't say it's great, more average. Moffat's nonsensical plots often just left the viewer confused, but in this case it actually works to create a uniquely surreal feel. This was also the last episode before the show really went downhill with Series 9. Luckily for us, we were completely oblivious to this at the time, about how badly the show would fall from grace in the coming years. The episode would have been much better had this actually been Clara's final episode, but nope, that all gets thrown out at the end. Thanks, Moffat. At number 10, we have The Husbands of River Song. We were interested to see how Alex Kingston's River Song would interact with the 12th Doctor, but it would have been much more interesting to see how the relationship would have gone with the much grittier Series 8 version of the 12th Doctor. But instead, this was directly after Series 9, when the character had been watered down significantly, and it appeared like Stephen Moffat had decided that Doctor 12 was now just an older version of Doctor 11. River Song also comes off as rather unlikable in this episode. This was around the time that Moffat had decided to take the feminist narrative into overdrive Overdrive, and this was the episode with that wonderful line where River Song states she believes thinking for a man is weird. At number 11, we have what is probably Matt Smith's worst episode, The Doctor, the Widow, and the Wardrobe. What really stands out, and not in a good way, is Smith's over-the-top performance. The 11th Doctor had always been characterized by controlled mania, but it just seems to be all over the place in this episode. It was like the Doctor had decided to try speed or something. I think they were trying to go for something a bit more light and humorous with the Doctor in this episode, but frankly it's just cringeworthy. This episode also fell victim to bad child actors, which are really, really bad in this instance. At number 12, we have the return of Dr. Mysterio, which, for exactly 1 year, was my least favorite Doctor Who episode. Everything about this episode just feels wrong, and it just doesn't seem like Doctor Who. What made this even worse was the fact that this was the only episode we got in 2016. The plot was boring and predictable, and one gets the distinct impression that Moffat was taking his feminist leanings even further in this one. Moreover, superheroes and Doctor Who just don't work. This was also the first time that we had a Christmas episode that doesn't have anything to do with Christmas. In retrospect, this episode was a precursor to the very bad Series 10. At number 13, we have what became my least favorite episode of Doctor Who until Series 11 reared its head. Twice Upon a Time is an absolute abomination, and it somehow seems to destroy the ultimate legacy of not one, but two Doctors. The slandering of the first Doctor was just unforgivable, and was an insult to the memory of William Hartnell. No thought was given to the context of the 1960s, and instead we see the first Doctor, from within a modern context, simply get eviscerated. I don't hold this against David Bradley. He actually did quite well with the material he was given. The person that I hold responsible for this is Stephen Moffat. Instead of the old man from the 60s that we all learned to respect, we get a raving misogynist. Every time he throws an insanely over-the-top insult at Bill, part of me died inside. I think this might be where Doctor Who finally died too. This episode also did a disservice to Peter Capaldi. The Doctor that we all thought would bring a new golden age to Doctor Who went out with a whimper. Capaldi deserved so much better. I will say this though, Twice Upon a Time is a work of brilliance compared to anything we got in Series 11. And that's my list of Doctor Who Christmas specials, ranked from best to worst. Keep in mind that this is only my opinion, and I would be interested in knowing how you would rank the Christmas episodes. Feel free to leave your ranking in the comments section below. As always everyone, thank you for watching, and Merry Christmas.